Welcome to No Broken Legs. I am your host, Evan Belfiore. It is a Saturday morning here in Cleveland, Ohio, and joining me to talk Week 7 of the NFL season is Jimmy Champ. Jimmy, how are you on this late Saturday morning?
Well, I'm still not a Richmond north of Richmond, so I'm just working these overtime hours for this bullshit pay. So.
Yeah, and last week didn't help with any of that because I took a fucking beating. San Francisco and Philadelphia losing were not good, but luckily this is sort of the stuff you have to take with gambling. You're going to have weeks where you lose. You just got to make sure you have enough weeks where you win in between those weeks.
There it is.
And I've done that enough. San Francisco and Philadelphia really have been moneymakers for really the both of us and most bettors for a while now. So I'm not going to get too tripped up on one game. But the Cleveland Browns, that was a real shocking win. It seems like people are falling into two camps with that game, Jimmy. And it's the camp that goes, yeah, this team's as good as we thought it was, and they're Super Bowl contenders. And then there's the camp that I'm in and I think you're in, which is they caught a lot of breaks to win that game, and they still don't look like more than a borderline playoff team. Are you with me on that assessment?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to win in the NFL, so anytime you win, you get a win, and you can't just say, well, they won because of those injuries, because we lost one because of an injury that happened during the game, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We don't lose to Pittsburgh if Chubb doesn't go down like that.
Definitely agree with that.
So that happens, so you can be happy for the win, but you do not want to over-evaluate or overextend how good of a win it was, because it took a lot of weird shit for that win to take place.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff that we can talk about from that game that could be responded with, yeah, but it didn't. PJ Walker tried to throw that game away a couple of times, which is probably why I think we'll see Deshaun Watson this weekend. He was back at practice, so I would assume he's going to play in Indianapolis. But if he doesn't, if PJ Walker has to start for an extended period of time, that's trouble, because PJ Walker was objectively terrible in that game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, he tried to throw it away multiple times. Fortunately, he wasn't able to. Fortunately, the Browns got a couple nice.
Yeah, but he didn't.
Nice calls to go their way. So he didn't, but I agree. If the aspirations are playoffs and beyond, you do not want a lot of weeks with PJ Walker, especially these next three. Like, if Deshaun is now all of a sudden healthy enough, even though last week he couldn't throw a football down the field, but now he's talking to the media saying, I'm not soft, whatever. Now he's going to come back and play because he's fully out, whatever that is, which is weird. But these are three games. These are three games you need to win before you play Baltimore and Pittsburgh again. Like, these are three winnable games if you have ready to play, looking more like that quarterback that played against Tennessee, Deshaun Watson. Like, if you have that, you should be able to stack 4 wins in a row.
And I think
but nobody really knows if he's going to play.
I think you hit the main point there. Stack wins.
Yeah.
When is the last time, Jimmy, do you remember that this team won 4 games in a row?
Well, do you want to talk about this? Because this is a big part of my betting strategy for this game, if you want to talk about this.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk because people continue to say Super Bowl, and if they're going to be a Super Bowl team, they have to win 3 or 4 games in a row. You have to win 3 games in a row to make the Super Bowl, and a 4th if you're going to win it. So I was just going to lead into that with, when's the last time they won 4 games?
So the answer to your question is, in 2020, they had 2 separate 4-game win streaks. In 2021, they had 1 3-game win streak.
Yeah, and that was at the beginning of the season. Right. They lost to Kansas City in that close game, and then they won 3 in a row.
The problem is, even with those 3 win streaks, Kevin Stefanski is 9-17 after a win.
Yeah, that's bad.
Now, this is by far the best defense he's had, possibly the best roster top to bottom. I would like to say that changes, but you destroyed Cincinnati, lost a weird game to Pittsburgh. You destroyed Tennessee, then you got destroyed by Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Now you won a weird game versus San Francisco, which is why I'm taking the Colts money line.
Yeah, I don't. Well, you know what? Let's get into the game. The Cleveland Browns are traveling to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. They are 3.5-point road favorites, plus 190 on the money line, plus 158 for the Colts on the money line. The over-under sits at 41. And you like the Colts in this game, Jimmy. Why?
There's absolutely no reason they should lose to the Colts. Absolutely none. But there's just, for me, 9-17, including this year when you've had this great defense, is too much for me to just look past. Like, I will take a loss in this game to see the Browns win back-to-back games and the defense be dominant like they are and the offense be productive, because the offense is really bad. Like, statistically,
nobody wants to talk about it, but they're awful.
Except for rush attempts and I think yards per rush, the Browns are near the bottom in every offensive category. The defense is fifth in points against, in first in yards given up, which is awesome. But the thing that I think can make a difference in a game like a bad team against the Colts is the Browns have turned the ball over 12 times and only forced 4 turnovers. At some point, that's going to cause you losses.
Well, it did against Pittsburgh. And it almost did against San Francisco. And so I've been sort of on an island. I think the Browns' defensive line is really dominant, and I think the Browns' defense at times has been completely dominant. But I still have some nagging doubts about just how good they are. And those doubts got furthered when that last drive with San Francisco, they marched right down the field. Like, they had to have a chance to get a field goal, and they just marched right down the field on the Browns.
Well,
that little slant pass that they ran to Brandon Ayuk, and he's got 4 Browns just escorting him down the field because they sure as shit weren't trying to tackle him.
Yeah, I mean, you can even go now. When healthy, the San Francisco 49ers are one of the 3 probably most elite offenses in the league. So take that into account. But, I mean, that first drive, they went 86 yards on 5 plays in 2 minutes, scored a touchdown. You can't tell me that, I believe this defense is very good, maybe even elite. But when it was ones versus ones in that game, the 49ers did whatever they wanted to.
Yeah. And I also worry about the fact that you mentioned the fact that the offense has also been pretty poor. They didn't really do anything on offense to win that game in the second half. They got bailed out by some penalties that, look, those are 50-50 calls. And do those usually go against the Browns? Yeah, so I'm not going to criticize the Browns for getting those and getting a win. Again, you've got to take the wins you get. But as gamblers, we look at what is repeatable. What can you rely on happening down the road? And right now, you can't rely on the Cleveland Browns to be able to move the football offensively. You just can't, because they don't do it consistently enough, and they have to get bailed out with penalties to make it happen. Now, they had some nice plays that got called back because of penalties, but again, that's who this team has been for a long time now. They get big plays that get called back from penalties because they're poorly coached, and they're just not very good at those things. It has been consistent for many years now that they do this. I don't know how it gets fixed, because this has been something that's happened a lot during Stefanski's coaching reign. So outside of doing something with the coach, which I don't think they're going to do anytime soon, I don't see how that gets corrected. But I'm actually going to take the Browns in this game, because any chance I can to bet against Gardner Minshew, I'm going to take. This is a game that the Colts should not score more than 10 points. I don't care if they have Jonathan Taylor back. I don't care if they use him like they've used him in the past. Go out there and be dominant. Go out there, be dominant, and win the fucking football game. That's what the Cleveland Browns should be doing. They should go out and win this game by a touchdown.
Yeah, I agree. We want to give a shout out to No Broken Legs favorite. Big Thanos played incredible against the 49ers, so kudos there. For me, a big thing in this game is if Deshaun plays, this is a stadium Deshaun Watson has a lot of games in without a lot of success as an NFL quarterback. Not a lot of wins for him in that in that dome in Indianapolis.
Yeah, but I mean, quite a few of those games were against Andrew Luck, so that's
true.
A very different situation than going and playing Gardner Minshew.
Absolutely, I completely agree. But for me, it's still a step in the right direction if Watson plays and he looks good in a place he's familiar playing and he plays well, and the Browns, because this should be an easy win. This should be an easy win for the Cleveland Browns.
Even if P.J. Walker has to play, because honestly, other than the Tennessee game, there hasn't been much difference between what P.J. Walker did and what Deshaun Watson's done.
Yeah, I agree. So this should be like, I mean, I love the under here because I think this is like a 17-3 game, something like that. So I love the under in this game. The Browns should cruise, but just for me, I'm on the gambling side, I'm taking the Colts money line because I need to see Stefanski win back-to-back games.
Yeah. I'm definitely not betting the Browns to win by 3.5. I don't know what I'm going to bet on this game outside of the over-under because I do like the under. There's just so much to not know about in this game, and we've seen this so many times where the Browns get a big win and then turn around and play like absolute dog shit. You know, like Indianapolis gets the opening kickoff and their third play from scrimmage is a 60-yard touchdown, and then Cleveland comes out, turns the ball over, and they're down 10-0 before you can blink. Like, how many times have we seen that game play out?
Yeah. Now, this could be a game for the Browns defense. Now, we know traditionally, historically, Jim Schwartz defenses pressure a lot. They do get good sack numbers, but they don't get a lot of turnovers. But when your offense is turning the ball over like they are, the defense has got to flip some of those possessions back.
Yeah.
This would be a game to get some turnovers out of that great secondary because we know Gardner Minshew's never seen a receiver he didn't think was open. Like, Minshew's going to throw the ball. He doesn't know how many more attempts he's got in the NFL, so he's not going to not throw the football.
Yeah.
So, but the defense has to understand that he's going to keep coming. He's not going to stop. He's just going to keep throwing. So please cover Michael Pittman, pretty please.
And you mentioned our boy Big Thanos playing really well and holding down that right tackle spot. He's just been great. He's filled in fantastically. That's an absolute steal for them. I've joked about how he fell in the draft because he wanted to play basketball when he was like 12. And that seems to be what happened, and it's absolutely ridiculous. And the Browns finally got a mid-round pick that is working out really well. Another pick that we had liked last year that was showing some promise was DPJ. He's been basically absent this year. And Elijah Moore, the guy they brought in to really be a big playmaker, has also been mostly absent. A lot of people have been talking about them being disappointments. I actually don't think it's a problem with those two. I think it's a problem with lack of quarterback play. Where do you fall on that?
Yeah, I think it's like a quarterback play. I don't think you can really call DPJ a disappointment because he can't get on the field right now. But there were rumors he was getting in the doghouse, and I mean, he's special teams is pretty much the only spot where you really see him out there with a chance to do anything.
Yeah, he's not comfortable as a punt returner. They keep throwing him out there, but
now I do personally. I think Eli Moore has been a disappointment. Now I don't know why we keep
you're
trying
not blown away by 8 catches for 160 yards in 5 games.
Well, if I am, I'm blown right back by all the loss of rushing yards on these jet sweeps.
Yeah, they really need to knock that shit out. I mean, they're getting some gains out of it, but for the most part, teams, and not just the Browns, I think across the league, teams are better at recognizing those because we see those plays not being quite as effective. Now, you do break some here and there, and that Harrison Bryant playing quarterback jet sweep that they ran for the touchdown was a really nice play. That's the first time I think this season we've seen Stefanski do a trickeration play that actually resulted in a big play.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Not just an 8 to 15-yard screen pass gain.
Yep, I agree.
But we still saw problems with Stefanski. Why is PJ? I know he said PJ Walker ran that pass play on second down when they were down in the red zone on his own. What are you doing? You're the head coach. That's your guy. Aren't you telling him exactly what is supposed to be happening here? How do you have that kind of miscommunication happen there? That is on the coach. If the player doesn't know what the play is, Like, yeah, that's on the player, but it's also on the coach. And he needs to know to call a timeout there if he doesn't like what he sees. And I don't.
Yep.
The one pass that they called that got picked off and got San Francisco back in the game is another. Just I don't know what the fuck he's doing. Like, just what are you fucking doing?
Yeah, I mean, because you actually had some success on the ground, which a lot of teams haven't been able to do at all against San Francisco.
Yep.
And I think Walker still threw the ball more than they should have.
Yeah. I don't know why they weren't, what was it, the Bobby Boucher offense in Waterboy where they just kneel it 3 times? It's like, you can't move the ball on us, so we're just going to run clock.
Yeah, exactly.
So this sets up for the Browns. They get the Colts, then they get the Seahawks in Seattle, and you get Arizona at home the week after that. They got to go 2-3 in this stretch, right?
I think.
Or you said you think they have to go 3-0.
I think 2-3 against those teams, in my opinion, is failing. Like if Watson
I think
plays,
going on the road and beating Seattle's I think that's a tough ask.
I agree, but not with the elite defense that we have, and maybe an offense that gets right this week. I will say that's if Watson is healthy and plays all 3 games. I think you have to. I think it's a tall task, but I think you have to before Baltimore and Pittsburgh again, because we know what back-to-back games in the AFC North does to every team that plays in them.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a very good point. Do you have any final thoughts on the Browns game, Jimmy?
No, I hope Watson plays to make it easier on the team. But even with PJ Walker, I fully believe the Browns should be able to win. Like I said, it's especially if Walker plays. I think you're like a 17-3, something like that. If Deshaun plays, you should be able to score some more points and get a little bit more lopsided victory. But the Browns need this game, but I do think it could be a little bit of starting to stack wins, and maybe you get another 4-game win streak that they haven't had in a couple of years.
I think if Deshaun plays, he has to look good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to hear rust or injury talk. Like, I'm just over it. He was supposed to play 3 fucking weeks ago.
Yeah.
So if he's tough and if he can play, then fucking go out there and play. We are slowly encroaching a full season and a half of Deshaun Watson being on this team, and you have nothing to show for the 3 first-round picks, the second round, the third round, and whatever the other one was that they traded. You've got nothing for those things, and they have to start seeing some dividends because there's the seething level of fan pressure for bad quarterback play is just always there with the Browns. And with the defense being as good as it is, that pressure continues to build. And if they would have lost last week, the way people talked about the offense would be very different than they did with that missed field goal.
Yep. Yeah, I fully agree.
All right, we do have one game in the books. Jacksonville beat New Orleans on Thursday night in a fairly ugly game, but that seems to be all New Orleans plays. New Orleans had a chance to tie it late, and their dude just dropped the ball. Derek Carr was barking at people. He looked bad, and New Orleans' situation does not look good, Jimmy.
No, it doesn't, but it was good for our Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yep.
To get themselves another win and stay right in the thick of the AFC race.
Yeah, sitting at 5-2. Definitely looking good to win that division. Definitely looking good to hit the over on their win total. Hopefully they just keep it up. Let's get into the other games this week. The Baltimore Ravens have a really big game. They are hosting the Detroit Lions, who, I don't know, might be the best team in the NFC.
Stop it.
It's just a weird thing to say, but they're 5-1 and they look good. They are 3-point underdogs against Baltimore in this game. Minus 165 for the Ravens, plus 140 for the Lions. Over/under sits at 43. This is, if Detroit wins this game, I will entertain the idea of Detroit being the best team in the NFC, Jimmy.
Well, you would be stupid to do that. So whether they win or lose, they're not better than San Francisco or Philadelphia. But plain and simple, sorry, Lions fans, you're not better than those two teams.
Well, I mean, and we always say this with the qualifier right now. Right now, Jared Goff has put together almost a season of work that is one of the best bodies of work of any quarterback over that time span. And it is blowing my mind, even though he does seem to make mistakes in big moments like we saw with Seattle.
Yep. No, big kudos to Detroit for the win versus Tampa. Outside of week 1, that's the best team they played, and they handled business really well. I liked that. I watched almost the majority of that game, and they never got cute, never tried their trick play stuff. Jared Goff made some great throws on 3rd and long, but they had a lot of 3rd and longs. The run game looked really bad. They were bailed out by a lot of 3rd and long pass plays. I don't think you can do that against Baltimore. I'm taking Baltimore here. I don't think Detroit's better than Baltimore. So give me the Ravens here. I got no problems with that.
They really missed Montgomery.
Yeah.
And I think this is the type of game where Baltimore is going to try and beat them up. And I do like Baltimore in this game. Actually, at 3, I feel like this is probably going to be a push.
Yeah.
Because this feels like a game that's decided by a late field goal. At some point, we're going to have to believe in Detroit. It's not this week because I think Baltimore's good. But at some point, we're going to have to give Detroit their props because Philly has looked mortal at times. San Francisco definitely has looked like the best team in the league, except for last week. I mean, they've just been dominating teams. So it's just a question of that defense. If that Detroit defense can really shut down Baltimore, that a Baltimore offense that Lamar's been playing really well, even if the guys around him haven't always been there to help him. If Detroit can just keep shutting teams down, like that can't be ignored. So
well, yeah, but here's the thing I will say about Detroit, because we still don't know quite how bad Green Bay is and Minnesota's having their problems.
Well, that's fair.
The Lions may legitimately only have 2 more losses on their schedule.
Yeah, the 1 seed's in play for them, which is crazy.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because I think they're going to lose to Baltimore. I'll probably pick the Chargers to beat them. I'll probably pick the Cowboys to beat them. But the rest of the games on their schedule are winnable. That being said, I think the Lions will lose their first playoff game.
There is something to remember in that AFC teams have been beating NFC teams in head-to-head matchups for the most part.
Yep.
So that is something to keep in mind and something that is making me lean Baltimore. Another game that I'm putting that idea towards is the shit show of the week, the Las Vegas Raiders traveling to Chicago to take on the Bears in what looks to be a battle of backup quarterbacks. The Raiders are 2.5-point road favorites, minus 140 for them, plus 118 for the Bears. Over-under sits at 37.5. The Bears are starting a quarterback who I can't even remember his name, and Vegas is starting Brian Hoyer. I'll take Vegas, but this seems like a stay away, and I would advise most people to not bet this game.
Oh, no way, man. Put Vegas in your money line parlays. Maybe stay away from the points, but Vegas got to be better than the Bears without Justin Fields. They have to be. They absolutely have to be. So I'm taking.
I mean, they're 3-3 and they're minus 31 in their point differential. I was looking at the AFC standings, and it's just, how are all these teams 3-3? Like, the Raiders stink. The Colts aren't good. The Jets aren't good.
They've played teams from the NFC?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. There's a lot of 1 and 2 win teams in the NFC. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm with you that Vegas has to win this game. I don't want to think about this game more than we've already talked about it.
Understandable.
Big NFC South showdown between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. Tampa Bay are 2.5-point home favorites, minus 145 for their money line, plus 122 for the Falcons. Over-under sits at 37. Both of these teams really struggled last week. Both have been kind of up and down. This seems to be the type of game where if Tampa Bay's defense can hold up against that Atlanta rushing attack, it feels like Baker should be able to do enough against that Atlanta defense. What do you think?
Yeah, I fully believe Tampa Bay is better than Atlanta, but this is like if you watching that Lions game, this would be a game for Ritter to maybe get right a little bit. Like, he should be able to push the ball downfield with Pitts in Drake London and make some stuff happen. I don't think he will. Like, I'm taking Tampa Bay, but maybe he can. Like, this would be a week for them to maybe open up the playbook a little bit, try to get the ball downfield, because Tampa's really struggling, not just last week, but all year on deep passes. So, but
they've been pretty good otherwise, but
yeah,
they're one of the few teams that seems to give up big plays.
Yeah, but they're giving up big plays, but I don't know if Atlanta can really take advantage of that. So I'm going Tampa Bay here.
Yeah, this would be a nice win for my plus 1,000 Tampa Bay to win the division, which I've still held on to. You can cash it out for a good profit, but I'm still holding on.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to with how bad New Orleans is. Like
New Orleans stinks. Like I know everybody wants to pump them up because everybody seems to love Derek Carr, but that defense wasn't really that good on Thursday night, and Derek Carr is just bad, and now they're yelling at people. Like, that's not a good look.
No, so yeah, I think probably right. The winner of this game is probably the NFC South champion.
Yeah, that's what it would look like if Tampa wins this game. They move to 4-2. And they drop Atlanta to 3-4, so you get a big early lead there. New Orleans is 3-4, and Carolina's out of it at 0-6.
Yeah.
Up next, we have a battle of NFC East teams as the Washington Armada are traveling to New York to take on the Giants. The Commanders are 3-point favorites, minus 155 on the money line. Giants plus 130. Over/under sits at 37.5. When they can get good quarterback play from McDowell, whatever his fucking name is, they're pretty good. Like that, I said last week, I think the rest of that roster is pretty okay. I don't know if Daniel Jones is going to play in this game. I don't think it matters. I think Washington's just better. I think they're just better.
Yep, I agree. The Armada is definitely better than the Giants. Is the spread still 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Washington's 2 field goals better at least. So I'll take Washington. Take Washington points and money line, either way you want to go. Yeah, the Giants are really struggling. Do you think Daboll's job is in jeopardy at all at the end of this year?
I don't think it should be, but it probably will be.
Fair enough.
And this is another one of those situations where we talk about it in Pittsburgh. Everybody wants to get rid of Mike Tomlin because they don't think he's a good coach. Well, he hasn't had good quarterback play in a number of years now. Like that ain't his job. His job isn't to find the quarterback. His job's to coach the team. He doesn't pick the players. So yep. I don't know why he's taking that criticism, much like I don't understand why Brian Daboll would take criticism for the front office giving an inexcusable contract to Daniel Jones. I hate to keep talking about it, but it is an inexcusable contract that they gave Daniel Jones. And it is just an albatross around the neck of that franchise for the next 2 years.
Yep.
And it would be very... If there's one certainty in the NFL, Jimmy, it is that Cleveland fans know shitty organizations and bad decision making. And to your point about Daboll being in trouble, it would be just like a shitty organization to think he's the problem, or to say, well, we're paying Daniel Jones all this money and we can't get anything out of him with Daboll. Let's bring in somebody else to try to get something out of him. And that's how you let these things snowball into multiple seasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
You put yourself behind the 8 ball because you're trying to back up a bad decision instead of just cutting your losses with the bad decision and saying, okay, at least we know the coach can sometimes get something out of this guy that nobody's ever gotten anything out of. So clearly he can do something, and he was, the coach in Buffalo when Josh Allen played his best. So clearly there's something with Daboll and quarterbacks that he helps them play better. But they're just going to let him go because maybe they let him go because they want to try and get more out of Daniel Jones. That reminds me a lot of what the Browns did with Johnny Manziel and Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel, who were both on this coaching staff, and the Browns said, no, we don't need you.
Yep.
We gotta stick with our quarterback who shows up to practice drunk.
Yep.
Fucking A, man. Well, I just mentioned Josh Allen. The Buffalo Bills squeaked out a win against the Giants last week. I expect things to be a little easier this week because they're traveling They are traveling to New England to take on the Patriots. Buffalo 7.5-point favorites. This is actually down a point from earlier in the week when it was 8.5, but it is now settled at 7.5. Money line minus 385 for the Bills, plus 300 for the Pats. Over-under sits at 40. Jimmy, what reasons can you think of that the Patriots can keep this game close?
0.
Do we see Bailey Zappi in this game?
Yes. It'll be after Mac Jones has made enough mistakes that it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
but
if Mac Jones throws 2 first-half interceptions, we'll see Zappi before halftime.
Or I know they called up Cunningham, another guy. But, yeah, I think even if the Josh Allen roller coaster is down this week.
Which it shouldn't be. It's been down the last 2 weeks, so it should be up.
The Bills will still win by 2 scores, so I got no problem with this line. This is one of the games. This is one of the teams to put in your money line parlays this week.
Yeah, I like this and 3 other games and a nice 7-point tease. All right, yeah, a nice 4-team 7-point tease parlay. This game, the Seattle game, which we'll talk about next, and then Kansas City and San Francisco games, which we'll get to later. That Buffalo defense is playing really well. Mac Jones can't stop throwing the ball to the other team. Did you see the stat that Mac Jones has thrown more interceptions for touchdowns in the last 3 weeks than he's thrown touchdowns?
Yeah, it's pretty sad, man.
And people were like, "Oh, he was a Pro Bowler." Like, yeah, because he was the 8th alternate.
Exactly. Yeah, because the Pro Bowl that matters.
Yeah, Buffalo seems to sort of be settling in to where they always seem to settle in at. They're 4-2. They got that nice win against Miami. They're, they keep in the hunt for the 1 seed in the division, because it looks like Miami and Buffalo are going to be 2 teams that score 13-4 or score. Buffalo and Miami look like teams that are going to get into the teens for wins.
Yeah.
At least as long
absolutely.
as everybody stays healthy for Miami, of course.
Yep.
Up next, we have the Seattle Seahawks hosting the Arizona Cardinals. The Seahawks are 8-point favorites. I mentioned before I like them in a 7-point parlay tease. They're minus 385 on the money line. Cardinals plus 300. Over-under sits at 44.5. Are we getting to the point of the season where Arizona just sort of realizes that this isn't going anywhere and guys start maybe not trying quite as hard to avoid injury?
Not as long as Josh Dobbs is starting at quarterback. Dobbs is a leader who is not going to stop, and you're always going to be able to find some guys on the offense that are trying to do the most they can to further their career. Like I think Arizona will cover this spread. I think Seattle will win easily, but I think Arizona scores 14 in the fourth quarter to cover.
Yeah, I was looking at this as a backdoor cover candidate, which is really why I like the 7-point tease on this, because Seattle's only got to win by a point, and I think this is a game they win by 3-7.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I do think that with it being 8, I think Arizona will cover that. And I don't think for much of the game, I don't think Arizona's going to look like they're in it, but they will just do enough. Josh Dobbs he's not going to give up. He's going to keep fighting, keep doing what he's got to do. James Conner's looked okay in spots. Different guys are making splash plays here and there. So I think Arizona will cover, but this will be a big win for Seattle.
Yeah, it's just Arizona's just not good.
No,
they're just not a good team.
Bottom 3 team in the league, with or without Kyler Murray.
Yeah, and they're trying hard, and it looks like Kyler Murray is going to come back against our Cleveland Browns, Jimmy. That seems to be what the reporting is, so mark that on your calendars.
The Browns defense can send him right back out, too.
Our AFC North rivals, the Pittsburgh Steelers, are traveling west to take on the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are 3-point favorites in this game, minus 165 for them, plus 140 on the Steelers' money line. Over-under sits at 44. Fucking Pittsburgh, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Fucking Pittsburgh. They're 3-2, and they have been just absolute trash.
Yeah.
Just absolute trash, and they're 3-2.
On one side of the ball, the other side's still pretty good.
Yeah, they're still really good defensively like we thought, but they're just not good offensively. They may get Johnson back this week. I didn't see anything definitive. He was questionable. They need him back just to give themselves something to go with Pickens, because that seems to be their only offense right now is Pickens breaks a play or two, and that's it.
Yeah, I don't think getting Deontay back matters. Even though this game's in LA, we know Pittsburgh fans travel well. They're all over the country, these dumbasses. Yeah. So the stadium will be full of terrible towels. that will be waving in sadness because the Rams will win this game outright. No problems here. The Rams defense, I love the under. I think it's a low-scoring game.
Yes.
The Rams defense is good at stopping the couple things the Steelers are trying to accomplish. And Stafford, through all the pressure, will find a way to generate a couple good drives. So I think the Rams win this one.
Yeah, I think the Rams will very easily make Pittsburgh one-dimensional.
Yep.
And that's something that once we see it, regardless of how good teams are or how good defenses are, if teams become one-dimensional on offense, they become easy to defend.
Yep.
So I'm with you. I like the Rams this week. I like the bubble has to burst on Pittsburgh at some point, although we've said that for 25 fucking years, it seems. It still amazes me, Jimmy, that people don't like Mike Tomlin, even though he seems to win. They consistently win games they shouldn't because they're a well-coached, well-organized team.
True. I think part of the, unfortunately for Mike Tomlin, part of the hate for him as a head coach is because of his playoff record where he continuously lost to really good dynasties.
Yeah.
So,
you're losing to Peyton Manning and Patrick Mahomes, like these are the
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady, Lamar.
Yeah.
Lamar had a good playoff run there. Josh Allen had a good playoff run.
So
and it's not like if Pittsburgh, and they didn't make it into all of those games or make any deep playoff runs, but with the quarterback play that they've gotten, what do you do? It just goes back to that. You mentioned the Steelers fans traveling. Well, we didn't mention this with the Cleveland game, and shame on us for not doing it, but I know that there is a lot of talk of people going to Indianapolis to watch the Browns game. As the Browns continue to win games, it is worth seeing how well the Browns travel because there are fucking Browns fans everywhere.
Yeah,
there are Browns backers bars everywhere I've ever gone when I've traveled. There are Browns backers bars there.
Yeah.
East Coast, West Coast, all across the Midwest, the Plain States, the South. It is incredible. And what does that look like for the Browns? Because I think part of the reason that Pittsburgh wins a lot of games that they shouldn't is because they get a lot of extra semi-home games. And it just tilts things just a little bit to their side enough that they can squeak out a couple wins. And maybe that's something the Browns can work on because the crowd in Cleveland has been intimidating.
Incredible. It has.
They intimidated Tennessee, and I think they got into the heads of some of the San Francisco players too. That crowd is raucous. They are loud. Man, they just really drive that defense.
Yeah, and it seems like a large portion of the Muni lot is taking bus trips to Indy. So the Browns fans should be in full effect.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see the Browns fans travel like we see Steelers fans travel. Of course, if the Browns had been as good as the Steelers, we probably would. That would already have been established as a thing. So I expect as Cleveland becomes more of a, I still think they're a borderline playoff team. So a middle-of-the-road team for several years, that's only going to build. Yeah. Oh, man. There's just some games, Jimmy. We talked about the Vegas-Chicago shit show of the week. This would be the shit show game of the week if not for the backup quarterback bowl taking place in Chicago. We have the Green Bay Packers traveling to Mile High to take on the Broncos. They are 1-point road favorites, minus 120 for their money line, plus 100 for the Broncos. Over-under is 45. Green Bay is who I thought they were, Jimmy, because I didn't think they were going to be very good. I didn't think they'd be able to find something in Jordan Love. I didn't expect Jordan Love to play as well as he did for a little while. What the fuck was that all about? He just he wasn't doing anything that you could really adjust to. He was just running the offense, and now it seems like he didn't know what the fuck he's doing.
Yeah, that's why for me, this is a stay away. Packers games are a stay away for me right now because I don't know where the middle is for Jordan Love because
there doesn't seem to be one.
Right, because he was really, really effective for a couple games, and he's played really poor for a couple games. So I would lean Green Bay, but this is a stay away for me. I don't want anything to do with either of these teams. Normally, I would just take the team playing Denver's money line, but I just don't know how bad Green Bay is yet.
Yeah, and this seems to be a spot where maybe Denver sneaks a win. So I'm going to take Denver as the
Wow.
home dog.
All right.
Just like, is Green Bay good enough to be a road favorite? I know they're only a point, but something. This just feels like a week where the pressure gets eased a little bit in Denver with a win, and then in 3 or 4 weeks when they're 2-9, 2-10, we very quietly hear that Russell Wilson's no longer going to be the starting quarterback for one reason or another.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that's a team, I don't know, like that we always talk about their quarterback situation as a mess. I mean, if they bench Russell Wilson this year and his extension kicks in next year, that would be one of the just most hilarious things I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, it would continue their quarterback purgatory. They've been in for a long time.
Probably the game of the week. I shouldn't say probably. I should just look at the rest of the schedule.
No, it's the game of the week.
So the game of the week sees the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs hosting their AFC West division rivals, the LA Chargers. The Chiefs are 5.5-point favorites in this game, minus 240 on the money line, plus 196 for the Chargers. Over-under sits at 48. Kansas City just keeps winning, and the Chargers keep playing in weird games that they sometimes win and lose. Chargers are 2-3, Jimmy, and if they want any hope of winning the division, this is an absolute must-win for them.
Yeah, it is. You know, our boy Sully has been super unimpressed by Kansas City so far this year, and he's not totally off base. Kansas City has not looked sharp.
No,
they have not looked like
they're in second gear.
Yeah, they're going to have to shift it for this game because the Chargers always play them tough, always play them close. Like, I'm taking the Chargers. I don't know who I think is going to win the game, but I don't think Kansas City wins by more than a field goal if they win. So I like the Chargers at +5. So I'm taking the Chargers here. Justin Herbert needs to show something, man. Every loss they've had this year has came on him not performing well at the end of a game. So Justin Herbert, even if they lose, I need to see Justin Herbert be the superstar he's paid to be.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It just seems like Herbert's good, and he always plays really well. He doesn't seem to have an A+ game. I think that seems to be the thing. Like, he seems to always be in that B- to A- range. Can he find an A+? He's very methodical. Kansas City has sleepwalked through this season, and they're 5-1. They get McCole Hardman back, which I think is a good move because there's just to shake things up in that receiver room. The Kadarius Toney trade paid dividends last year in the Super Bowl, but he's been a disappointment for them this year. Very similar to how we're talking about Elijah Moore. Like, he hasn't been bad, but there were real expectations on him and not coming through. Just a disappointment. I think that people want to see more of them coming forward. I'm with you with the Chargers, though. They always play Kansas City tough, and Kansas City's still sleepwalking through the season. So I think this is where, unless they're playing a team that's really bad, you've got to look at them playing closer games. And this feels like a game that maybe Kansas City's up 10 in the fourth quarter, and the Chargers get a touchdown with like 4 minutes left, and they cut it to 3, and then Kansas City gets enough to run the clock out. You know, something like that.
Yep.
If Kansas City LA is not the game of the week, then Philly Miami certainly is. The Eagles are 2.5-point home favorites, hosting the explosive Dolphins. Minus 150 for the Eagles, plus 126 for the Dolphins. Over/under sits at 51.5. Lot of parallels between this game and the Buffalo game that we had talked about earlier, where we really loved the matchup between Miami's passing game against Philly's passing game, or against Philly's passing defense, I should say. The Philly run defense is really good, so that's another good matchup to see. But this is going to be a tough physical game. That is what Philadelphia wants to make it. They're going to have that home crowd backing them up. Is this a game where can Miami show that they learned something from that loss against Buffalo, that they can win these tough games? How do you think can they respond here, Jimmy? Do you think they have enough?
No, I think Philly wins by a field goal. I'm taking Philly. Philly is going to want to punch somebody in the mouth after the way they lost that game last week. And unfortunately for the Dolphins, that's who's on the other side of the field. This will be a great game to watch and just see how good of a coach Mike McDaniel is. He's been very good so far, but we'll get to see because Philly's just going to do everything Buffalo did and can do everything Buffalo did. So I'm very curious to see what Miami's move out of check is. Like, how do they change up to combat what they know is coming? Can they do it? How will Philly stack up on those one-on-one situations where you just have to cover Tyreek and Waddle? Like, this game's going to be super good. I do believe Philly will cover and get the win, but it's going to be a great game.
I'm correcting it. I took Miami against Buffalo, and I'm going to correct and take Philly against Miami here until Miami shows they can beat a tough physical team and win a game like that. I can't trust them. I also think Philly's offense, for all the flack it's taking, they still put up points, man. I know they're not just moving the ball at will, but fucking nobody is. Like, it just defenses have gotten the upper hand overall, and I think we are judging Philly from what they looked like last year and the year before instead of understanding that everybody except Miami, although when Miami's had everybody, they've looked explosive. This is just the longest they've had everybody, so that sort of skews the perception there. But if you compare all the teams to the last couple of years, I would think we would see the scoring numbers come down.
I would agree.
So I think Philly's still an elite offense. They seem to be able to move the ball on anybody. They still have a lot of different ways they can hurt you. And that Miami defense just has not shown that they can hold up against good offenses.
No, you like the over here?
Oh, yeah. I like the over. Yeah, I only like a couple overs this week. I like the over here. I like KC Chargers to go over. And oddly, I like the Tampa Bay Atlanta game and the Washington New York game to go over.
Oh, okay.
I know those are low lines at 37, but those feel like the type of games that end like, 20 to 18, 21 to 20, 24-21. That's what those games feel like. Because you look at them and you think, oh, man, they're not going to score any points. But I think those are the games where you see coaches sort of put something together to try to steal a touchdown.
Yeah, that's fair.
Our last game of the week sees the no longer undefeated San Francisco 49ers traveling to Minnesota to take on the woe-begotten Minnesota Vikings, who 2-4, they're -6 in point differential, so all of these games have been close. It was like you said last week, they've regressed to the mean on those one-score games. This is not a spot I would want to be the Minnesota Vikings, even with some of the problems that San Francisco has. I think when they can plan, I think they can handle McCaffrey and Debo being out for some stretches here and there. It's certainly they're not a Super Bowl team without those guys, but Minnesota they're just not a good football team. They're not a bad football team, but they're not a good football team.
That's absolutely fair. Yeah, this is easy. San Francisco by 2 touchdowns.
And we get Kirk Cousins under the lights. Monday Night Football against a really good defense. No Justin Jefferson.
San Francisco by 1 million.
Yeah, and I like San Francisco, Kansas City, Seattle, Buffalo, 7-point, tease those down. So you even get a little cover on the Kansas City game. They can even lose by a point and you're okay. And if you want to throw Philly in there too, 7 points get you to Miami winning. I don't think Miami's blowing them out, so you get a little cover on Miami winning by a field goal. Just throwing that out there. Some things I'm looking at.
Yeah, I like that. Those are good spots to focus.
It always seems like we get to week 7 and I'm looking at the slate of games and going, I don't really love a lot of these games. Even the games that I wanted to parlay down, a lot of times I would just parlay them on their lines and get better odds. But nobody has really shown a real level of dominance. I guess San Francisco has the most, but even Kansas City, who always wins, doesn't seem to be dominating.
No, well, and I'll give them their flowers while we're talking about this. if you are a believer in Detroit, I would hammer that Detroit money line.
Yeah, that is. Man, I just feel like we're late to the party with Detroit. But it's just a week where I feel like everything that I'm hesitant to move off of is in that Baltimore-Detroit game, because I always think Baltimore is better than they end up being, even though they're always good, and I just don't want to believe in Detroit. So I wonder if I'm being too stubborn on both sides of this.
I don't know. I think Baltimore is absolutely better than Detroit, but that's just
it's just a Jared Goff thing. If this is a close game late,
like you're outside,
Jared Goff
like,
makes mistakes at home in close games.
I mean, it's gonna be probably fairly nasty outside in Baltimore Sunday. I can't lean on Jared Goff there. I'm sorry. I don't think a quarterback can be in the. Now, I do agree with you. If you take his last 17, Jared Goff has played very well. But even in those games, the mistakes have been there to cost the team.
Yeah.
But to your initial statement, I think Detroit at spells has looked like one of the 3 most dominant teams in the league. So kudos to them on going in the right direction.
Hold on. Did you see how long is Montgomery out?
I want to say like 4 weeks, but I'm not fully sure.
Okay, yeah. With that game, I guess what I keep coming back to is David Montgomery, who I've never been huge on. I've had him on my fantasy teams a few years, and I actually have him on one of my teams this year. He always seems to underwhelm. But that Detroit running game looked a lot different with him in there, and maybe that's just them trying to make adjustments. Maybe that's just a bad matchup. I don't know the intricacies of Detroit's offensive systems that well, but I keep going back and forth like this. It's like playing tennis. Like, I keep coming up with pros and cons, but that defense is playing really well. And I mentioned it when we talked about it earlier, how that defense holds up against Baltimore is going to be a big piece of the puzzle with how I feel about them.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, as we talked about with the Browns, winning in the NFL is hard no matter who you're playing. Yeah. So you can only play who's across from you, but that doesn't mean the teams you're beating are good teams either. Like, I think, yeah. Except for Week 1 Kansas City, who had the dropsies, somebody played the Madden drop card on them. This is the best team Detroit has played, so we'll really get a good look at who this Lions team can be, and it may very well be one of the top 3 teams in the NFC.
Yeah, yeah. Especially if you're going to see Debo and McCaffrey be out for stretches of time, or if they come back and then they get re-injured. Like, that could be the opening that Seattle needs to try to sneak the NFC West.
Yep.
There's still, and I guess we can wrap real quick here with, there are still plenty of future bets out there. There have been some, there's still over-unders that you can take. You've got a little more knowledge. I know Houston is a team that has seen their over-under really jump. So if you're a believer that they can get to 9-10 wins, you can still get good odds on that.
If only you had taken that Texans over before the season.
Yeah, I know. Well, I took the Tampa Bay plus 1,000 to win the division, so that was where it does even out. You can't hit all the long shots.
You're absolutely right.
Which is why people should, pick and choose which of these lines you take from us, because we're right enough that we make money. But if you can find a way to find the 2/3 of the time that we're right and the 2/3 of the time that Jimmy's right, and put those together into a betting pattern, you can retire and then sponsor the show.
You're absolutely correct.
All right, man. Well, week 7, more to be learned, and it'll certainly go a long way. We'll just have to see what shakes out with the AFC, with so many teams being in the morass. Just who can rise above all of that and separate themselves from the pack early in the season. And for the Browns, it seems like it's been a pretty poor year other than the defense. But where would they sit right now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They'd be the 7th. They'd be the 7th team, and they'd be the last team in.
Yep.
Because they're tied with Pittsburgh at a 3-2 record. Pittsburgh obviously beat Cleveland, so they would have the tiebreaker there. So you're right there. You just got to stack some wins, and this is a good chance to do it. And A win here knocks Indianapolis down. That gives them 4 losses and a head-to-head win, which means you do not have to worry about them moving forward. This would also put the Browns at 3-2 in the conference.
Yep.
Well, that's it. Thanks for joining me, Jimmy, and talking some football here on a Saturday morning.
No place I'd rather be, brother.
And I want to thank all of you for listening. You can like or subscribe our podcast below the video here to keep up with all of our latest pods. We generally tend to do better as the season goes on. So we've started hot so far this year, and we would like to continue that trend, and hopefully we can keep you winning some money. So for Jimmy Champ, I am Evan Belfiore, and we thank you for listening to No Broken Legs.